Before the plagiarism, before the art exhibits, before the rehab, before he badmouthed Steven Spielberg and frightened studios with his behavior, Shia LaBeouf gave an interview to Parade.com where he said,
"I know I'm one of the luckiest dudes in America right now. I have a great house. My parents don't have to work. I've got money. I'm famous. But it all could change, man. It could go away. You never know."
LaBeouf told the interviewer that when he is feeling insecure, he sometimes stops his bike on the side of a busy road to see if the people passing by recognize him. He is scared they won't. It's 2013. Jennifer Lawrence falls down at the Oscars. Reese Witherspoon gets arrested for disorderly conduct. Paul Walker dies in a car crash at Kelly Johnson Parkway and Hercules Street in Los Angeles. And Shia LaBeouf is being fired from the Broadway play Orphans. According to co-star Alec Baldwin, LaBeouf was obsessed with preparation, emailing Baldwin videos of himself doing lines from the entire play. Baldwin claims LaBeouf verbally attacked him in front of the crew, berating Baldwin for slowing him down. Baldwin says he told the director of the play, Dan Sullivan, that given the problems with LaBeouf, he was willing to step down. Sullivan fired LaBeouf instead. It's 2014. Pharrell Williams releases Happy. People around the world participate in the Ice Bucket Challenge to raise awareness and support for ALS. Casey Catanzaro is the first woman to finish the qualifying and semifinal stage on American Ninja Warrior. And Shia LaBeouf is getting on a plane after pleading guilty in a New York court to disorderly conduct. He gets an email from Alec Baldwin. We don't know what it says, but LaBeouf says it's beautiful. They haven't talked since LaBeouf was fired from Orphans. LaBeouf admits to following Baldwin home some nights after he was fired and taking up boxing lessons, doing something, anything, trying to find closure. He said he attended a performance of Orphans and sat in the front row. Ben Foster, the actor who replaced LaBeouf, came up to him after the performance and shook his hand. LaBeouf says,
"And after the show, I got up and clapped for him. And I'm crying, they're crying, and Ben was the bridge. He came up to me and shook my hand from the stage, man. And that's all I needed. Because I always felt like I'm not good enough. I felt that way my whole life. And I was so desperate to be good in that play that I overdid it."
On the movie Lawless, Shia LaBeouf was inspired by Tom Hardy's method acting. There are many facets to method acting, but one generic way of looking at it is that the actor commits to their role so much that they stay in character the whole performance, whether on or off camera. One example might be Jim Carrey in the film Man on the Moon, playing entertainer Andy Kaufman. Carrey would refer to himself in the third person.
Jim had trouble later on, and it kind of threw him for a loop, and he got angry.
And even talked to Kaufman's real daughter as her father. LaBeouf considers himself more a subjectionist or an escapist, who likes to fall into a role. There are a number of stories about the lengths he goes to in his roles, including one where he admits to taking LSD during the filming of The Necessary Death of Charlie Countryman, after which he choked the film's director, Frederick Bond, who subsequently almost quit the production. Of the ordeal, LaBeouf said,
"I wasn't evolved enough as a human being to be able to control my commitment. Because I was so scared of being a bad actor, there was no limit to the commitment."
It would be pretty easy to simply dismiss LaBeouf as being crazy.
The worst thing to call somebody is crazy is dismissive. I don't understand this person, so they're crazy. That's bullshit. These people are not crazy, they're strong people. Maybe the environment is a little sick.
I admit that I'm guilty of that too. I read about his plagiarism. I read about his tweet afterwards where he claimed he was retiring from public life, about how he criticized Steven Spielberg, and showed up at the Berlin Film Festival at the premiere of Nymphomaniac with a bag over his head that read, "I'm not famous anymore." I thought that was it for his career. And apparently I wasn't alone in this. Many people in the industry thought he was nuclear. In a 2018 interview with Esquire, he said that no one was giving him a shot. that he was talking to Spike Lee about making a movie with him, but Lee's financiers said no, and so that was that. Then I saw Honey Boy at the Toronto International Film Festival. It's a very intimate film. The majority of it is shot in a hotel room. The film is about LaBeouf's relationship with his father when he was a child actor.
What step he's about to take playing his dad, which seemed kind of dangerous to me in a way and like really bold.
To give you an idea of the relationship, here's a story from LaBeouf in a 2014 interview.
I must have been 10 years old making this movie called The Christmas Path. I had this scene with Dee Wallace and I was supposed to break because I missed my father. We did it once and I couldn't get there. I felt like I failed everyone and ran over to the director and said, "Can I bring my dad up here?" This is when he was still a parent on set, and I brought my dad in and placed him right on the dolly. Right before we filmed, I looked at him and my dad muttered, "You can do it, honey boy." He was really supportive and still is. He broke me and it worked. Ever since then, it's been my way of working. I try to make everything as real as possible. If it feels real to me, then I can go home happy. And there's no pain worse than being bad, so I'm willing to do anything and everything. It's not good for my personal life, but neither is being bad. I'd rather be anything but bad.
If we are to believe the film follows Shia LaBeouf's own timeline, the movie takes place during the 3-year period where LaBeouf was working on the Disney show Even Stevens. Shia LaBeouf began his career as a child actor. Growing up poor near Echo Park, acting was a hustle, a means of financial survival for himself and his family. He got his first agent by cold calling agents and pretending to be his own British manager. One agent didn't buy it but was charmed enough to hire him. She remains his agent to this day. LaBeouf worked on a few TV movies like Breakfast with Einstein and Monkey Business. Honestly, it's hard to keep myself from talking about Monkey Business for like 20 minutes. There are so many weird things about it, like how in the movie there are no bad guys or good guys that know karate, and at some point, out of absolutely nowhere, some karate guy shows up to save the kids. Then LaBeouf had spots on TV shows like Freaks and Geeks and ER. But the time period during Even Stevens were very formative years for LaBeouf. While he describes the filming of the show like going to Chuck E. Cheese, when he wasn't filming, he'd be at a motel with his father and frequenting 12-step addiction meetings with him. LaBeouf's father, Jeffrey, was trained as a Commedia dell'arte clown who once opened for the Doobie Brothers. When Shia was very young, Jeffrey would head into Echo Park dressed as a clown, performing and selling hot dogs and snow cones. Sometimes Shia and his mom would dress up and perform with him. Jeffrey was also a Vietnam veteran who served 3 tours and, after returning home, struggled with alcohol and heroin addiction. Honey Boy is a workshop of that experience for LaBeouf.
Yeah, I was in a mental institution, and they told me I had PTSD. We got a solution for you. So we're going to go through all these dark chapters of your life, and we're going to expose them and write them down and play them out. And I had something that felt like scene work.
It's not clear how closely Honey Boy relates to Shia's own life in terms of a literal he said, she said, he did, she did. But there are some obvious literal similarities.
Why am I here? Why am I here? Answer the question. Custody. The cuffs are too tight. Why am I in custody? Why am I in custody?
So I hadn't seen my dad in 7 years, went to go see him, recorded the whole thing, FaceTiming her, recording the conversations. From this, you get a lot of this dialogue like, "Hey, I'm making a movie about your dad. Make me look good, honey boy."
You're making a movie about me? Well, make me look good, honey boy.
LaBeouf wrote Honey Boy while he was doing his exposure therapy. Shia describes the process as,
You keep talking about it, you keep bringing it up, acting it out, thinking about its smell, every which way you can get to it. And a lot of my it has to do with my relationship with my dad. That dude is my gasoline.
some of this will be assumptive, but it's just to paint a picture. LaBeouf actually considers his relationship with his dad a blessing because it gave him texture, but nonetheless. Imagine the worst relationship you've ever had with someone. And imagine actually playing your abuser. And pretending to abuse someone the way that you were abused.
All smart guys know. If you could hit your boss once.
I can't believe Shia did that. and not only did it, but made something from it that not only helped him, but was praised by and may help others. That's true artistry.
Do that, do I? Huh? I pump you full of strength. Because we're on a team, and I know you got what it takes. You're a fucking star, and I know it. That's why I'm here. I'm your cheerleader, honey boy.
There's this quote I learned from the music artist Michael Posner. Quoting Amanda Palmer in her book, The Art of Asking, he says,
"An artist's job is not too different from a psychiatrist's job, in that they take on their own suffering and try to transform it into something beautiful."
Reading Shia's interviews, looking at his body of work, I see an artist that is willing to die in order to become a better artist. Creating is a hard gig. Growing as an artist is never over. Say you take on a huge project that just takes everything from you. Working days, weeks, years, tirelessly. Pushing through one challenge to the next. And when you get to the top of one hill, your next job is to go up a mountain. And then a higher one. And whether you're going to improve as a person or as an artist, that's your journey. Not everyone is up for that. Sometimes we have to stay parked for a while. But to find someone who is not only up for the journey, but looks at each mountain, no matter how high, no matter how dangerous, and says, "I'm willing to die to go up that. You coming with me?" is a rare and beautiful thing, and more than a little foolhardy. It's also not easy to keep going when you stumble, and that's one of the remarkable things about Shia LaBeouf's story. He's fallen hard, many times. In his 2012 short, HowardKanTour.com, he was accused of plagiarizing Dan Clo's work, Justin M. Damiano. And it's unmistakable. In the film, parts of the narration are lifted almost word for word.
Most critics will give any movie 3.5 stars if it flatters their self-image. I take it much more seriously.
LaBeouf has since apologized for his plagiarism.
My apologies on Twitter were stolen from other people's apologies as a wink, a very ironic way of apologizing. I was running with the philosophy to back the play of a bad action. I took work and tried to adapt it into a film out of insecurity, a fear of my own ideas. I thought, well, I have a right to do it because this postmodernist Kenneth Goldsmith's idea of uncreative writing says so. I ran with that and found that it put me in a corner.
Kenneth Goldsmith is an American poet. What LaBeouf is referring to is Goldsmith's book, Uncreative Writing, a book that explores, in this age of the internet, what lines should be drawn around being an author and taking from an author, and whether or not there should be any lines at all.
There's something about cutting and pasting that I like conceptually, and I believe in the future generations will be able to simply cut and paste and claim it as their own. Myself, I'm still a little bit old-fashioned. When I type it and when it appears in my Microsoft Word document in my font, it looks like my writing, and it becomes my writing. In a sense, Walter Benjamin said, the difference between reading something and copying something is the difference between flying over a landscape in an airplane and walking along that road.
If LaBeouf bought into this line of thought, it helps me appreciate how this happened, but at least to me, it still doesn't make it right. And then there's LaBeouf's arrest record. In December 2007, he was arrested for trespassing in a Walgreens, which is as strange as it sounds.
I'm weird about the conversation. I start backing up and I back into the candy aisle, and I'm feeling weird about that I just backed into it. And now I'm trying to act like I did it on purpose, so I grab these gummy bears and I'm like, yeah, these.
Then in 2008, LaBeouf was involved in a car crash that injured his hand and knee. He was asked to take a breathalyzer and refused, and was arrested, then released on a misdemeanor DUI. In 2014, LaBeouf was arrested on multiple charges while at a performance for the musical Cabaret in New York City, and later pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct.
Beautiful 50-year-old women, and I say, oh yeah, well tonight's the night, ladies, what's it gonna be? What do you want to drink? And they look at me like, don't talk to me.
In 2017, he was arrested for assault and harassment during his He Will Not Divide Us exhibit, a 24-hour live stream that encouraged people to say, He will not divide us, starting from the day of President Donald Trump's inauguration. Charges were later dropped. Later in 2017, LaBeouf was arrested in Savannah, Georgia for being drunk in public. A video was released online of his arrest. In the video, LaBeouf was racist and belligerent.
I came up to you asking for a cigarette, you dumb.
There's also the worrying ways LaBeouf presents himself in the industry. In a 2016 interview with Variety, he discussed working with Steven Spielberg.
You get there and you realize you're not meeting the Spielberg you dream of. You're meeting a different Spielberg, who's in a different stage of his career. He's less a director than he is a company.
During a press conference for the film Nymphomaniac, LaBeouf walked out after a reporter asked if he and co-star Stacey Martin were afraid the sex scenes in the film would be too much, or if they were confident in the director, Lars von Trier. Prior to leaving, LaBeouf quoted Eric Cantona, a soccer player who uttered the same words before he walked out of a press conference in which he was addressing his 8-month ban for kung fu kicking a fan in the stands in 1995.
When the seagulls follow the trawler, it is because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea.
When the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea.
Then, during the Nymphomaniac premiere at the Berlin Film Festival, LaBeouf wore a paper bag over his head that read, "I am not famous anymore." A few days later, LaBeouf and fellow artists Luke Turner and Nastya Sadyronka unveiled a performance art project called #IAMSORRY, where visitors could enter the exhibit, pick an item that was important to Shia off the table, and enter a room with him where he was seated wearing the bag. It's one thing to be an artist expressing yourself. It's another to do so during the promotion of a film for a director you deeply respect.
And there's only maybe 20 of these guys in the world, and 5 at the tippy top of the mountain, Lars being at the tippy top of the mountain.
By the end of 2018, Shia LaBeouf's artistic merit had been challenged, his reliability as an actor in the film industry had been questioned, and his arrest record was considerable.
Wondering if you feel that you have gone off the rails personally, or if you feel that you've just taken a new direction.
Yeah, I think a bit of both.
During #IAMSORRY, according to Luke Turner, a journalist entered the piece and was very open to the experience. She thanked them for how moving it was, then wrote about it.
At one point, we reached out to his hand and grabbed it. He squeezed it back, hard. Finally, after a minute or so of rambling, we urged Shia to see the project through. Most people, including us if we're being honest, don't believe that you'll be sitting here during the entire time. Prove us all wrong and see this thing through. Shia, surprisingly, stared straight into our eyes, smiled again, and nodded in silence. We stood up to go, and as an afterthought, turned to him and asked, almost jokingly, "Can we have your bag?" To our complete and utter surprise, he whipped the bag off and handed it to us with a wide, genuine smile. In the shock of the moment, with the bag in hand, we leaned in and asked whether we could hug him. He stood up immediately and held us tightly for a brief moment before smiling at us as we exited.
Shia, Luke, and Nastya then created the piece #TakeMeAnywhere. It was a project where the trio took a month-long trip and would make an online post every day indicating their location so that any member of the public could show up and take them anywhere. They encountered one young man who told them a story about how he was forced to leave his home and friends when he was a teen after his mother found out he was gay. Shia asked him,
Why here? Why this trip? Why did you guys decide to make this journey? Why did you drive all this distance? And why are you holding all this shit in?
The main reason for me to do this was to just be a part of something, like art, and just creating something again. Because I'd lost that for a while.
When artists leave their art, they die a little. LaBeouf said his parents were happiest when they were creating together. I think Shia LaBeouf is a standing testament to the artist. An eternal statement that says, "I have done so many things wrong. So very many things. But I will still create. and I will breathe my whole life force into it, even if it kills me. Shia's career began as an entertainer. A lot of his earlier work is mostly just charm and humor.
Guilty? Right. Even if I was, which I'm not, I would do the healthy thing and keep it tightly bottled up inside of me.
In 2003, though, he starred in Holes alongside Jon Voight. Voight took him aside and shared films and acting books with him and gave LaBeouf an education on the craft of acting. And whether by Voight's influence or the role he was in, you start to see something different in LaBeouf's performance in Holes. You start to see more nuance. I think LaBeouf's humor and charm is what helped make him a star, but it's not what he's been chasing in recent years. In 2013, LaBeouf was in the film Nymphomaniac. As part of the audition process, he had to send a picture of his penis, which he readily did. He also sent footage of him and his then-girlfriend having sex.
Shia is the kind of actor that I don't think you can ever feel like you can't push him more. He's just like, all he wants to do is go the furthest he can as an artist.
There's a kind of space to certain indie films, and while unique, Lars von Trier's work, at times, has a similar space. There's a quiet to them. Their quiet nature and moments create a thick, uncomfortable atmosphere. There's almost an expectation from an audience that silences will be filled with dialogue, but rather than do that, von Trier's films live in those spaces. And as we occupy that space, we automatically are forced to experience the film's own reality, which is established by its own pacing and rules. Acting in these spaces is difficult because there are less words to guide or hide behind. It's all expression. You would think the Disturbia Transformers comedian Shia couldn't play ball on that field, but he works just as well as anyone, finding nice emotional counterbalances to characters that seem devoid of it.
When you buy a tiger, right, you also have to feed it. Satisfy it.
In 2014, LaBeouf was in the film Fury alongside Brad Pitt and John Barenthal. Prior to the film, LaBeouf joined the U.S. National Guard. He had a dentist shave a tooth below the gum line to mimic a common gunner injury, and he cut 2 scars on his cheek and reopened them to keep them fresh during the shoot. Director David Ayer said, "He shows up and he has this scratch on his face saying he needs to do this, and I'm like, you know we have makeup people that can do that stuff." But it was his ritual, part of putting on his acting armor. And when you have someone who's really going for it, it breathes through the cast. Everyone else steps up. But LaBeouf was happy to commit fully for director David Ayer. LaBeouf said,
"The first thing David said to me was, I want you to know that what's being offered to you is not just a film. This is a life changer. We're going to push it all the way to the edge. I want you to make this movie like you'll never make another movie. You're going to die on this set." David is the best dude I've ever worked for. He's not the observer. He's going through it with you. It's real. There's no rehearsed fighting scenes. You're getting punched in the face for real. There is no room for actors. It was like becoming Christian. You subject yourself to everything that's coming. You relinquish everything. That's the cost of working on that movie, and the reward is heavy. I think it's the best work I've ever done. I attribute that to the dudes I was around. Didn't have at all to do with me. There is not a moment in that movie that I had any control over. It's David using me like a guitar.
It's chilling watching Shia in Fury.
Wait until you see it.
See what?
What a man can do to another man.
LaBeouf said,
I believe in the healing power of cinema. It's spiritual for me. It's not just a job. This is my therapy. Movies make your soul grow. And I'd love to be in one movie that does that. It's really what I've been chasing. And you can't get there unless you give a lot.
This level of commitment, and his willingness to explore himself and his roles, and chasing these changes, brings LaBeouf to such touching, interesting work. Like Man Down, a twisting narrative about an Afghanistan veteran dealing with PTSD. Man Down has such a demanding range. So much tender love.
So anytime I want to say I love you, what am I going to say to you?
Man down.
Yeah, like that too, with that little smirk on your face. Say it again.
Man down.
Yeah.
So much searching. And a pain that many won't be able to understand. Maybe with films like Man Down, audiences can start to paint the kind of picture they could empathize with. Then there is Peanut Butter Falcon. It is a film directed by Tyler Nilson and Michael Schwartz. In 2011, they met Zach Gottsagen, an actor with Down syndrome, and wanted to make a film with him. They penned The Peanut Butter Falcon, a modern adaptation of Huckleberry Finn. In it, Gottsagen plays Zach, a young man with Down syndrome who escapes an assisted living facility and is found by LaBeouf's character Tyler. Tyler and Zach are both fugitives, for their own reasons, and attempt to flee their state and take Zach to his dream, a wrestling school in Florida. The film is such a beautiful exchange between Tyler and Zach. At first, Tyler wants nothing to do with Zach, but Zach needs a little help and Tyler is decent enough that he can't just leave Zach behind. And they start to share, and they start to save each other. It's such a lovely human journey for two men, something that's not too far from real life. It was during the filming of Peanut Butter Falcon that LaBeouf had his very public arrest in Savannah, Georgia. After returning to filming, the cast was pussyfooting around LaBeouf's arrest, but Gottsagen went straight at Shia. Gottsagen said, "You're already famous. This is my chance, and you're ruining it." Shia responded,
To hear him say that he was disappointed in me probably changed the course of my life. I don't believe in God, but did I see God? Did I hear God through Zach? Yeah. He met me with love. And at the time, love was truth, and he didn't pull punches. And I'm grateful. Not even on some cheeseball trying to sell a movie. In real life, that is magical.
Peanut Butter Falcon isn't just a film about looking within and becoming a better version of ourselves. It's a testament to what the people filming it experienced through Gottsagen. Honey Boy and Peanut Butter Falcon were released the same year in 2019. LaBeouf had been on the precipice of what he'd always feared. Studios were not interested in working with him, and his ability to make his art through film was compromised. Then in 2019, LaBeouf was at a roundtable with these people, as a peer. And there is something hopeful about that. We don't have to condone the bad things that Shia LaBeouf has done, but we can acknowledge what he's managed to build. At what point do we agree to turn our back on an actor? At what atrocity are their actions too far? At what point do their actions become meaningless? Their journeys, their breakthroughs? At what point does a cry out in pain not deserve a helping hand? And what kind of films and art will Shia LaBeouf make next, if we give him a chance?